tell me your name?
Fred.
Nice to meet you. Fred. What is your relationship to Chris? Say friend, family, or other.
Other.
Understandable. Human relationships can be hard to define. Exiting to main menu.
Go to sleep.
Detecting lack of enthusiasm. 10101010.
So there we are, folks. Meccanoid. In this case, I've changed his name. It's Frankie Meccanoid, after Frank Hornby. It's not Frank because there's already a large Meccanoid called Frank. So next best thing, Frankie. Not very enlightening really, but there you go. Now, it's quite a long build, and although it's not exactly complicated, it's not helped by the instruction book in part being quite traditional. In other words, there's a few, well, shall I say, niggles. I will go into that and some of the build. If I did absolutely everything, we would be from now till, not this Christmas, but probably the Christmas after that. And as regular viewers know, I do waffle a bit, so I'll try not to. So in short, obviously 350 is a bit of an outlay, but if you can afford it, just do it. It's such a laugh, and it's got people at work really noticing Meccano, and until I worked at the current location, that a lot of people didn't really know what it was, certainly the younger staff. And it's got he's definitely one for the ladies. He's pulled one or two. I think because they can actually see, and this is with like many Meccano exhibitions, you can have some fantastic models, large models. In some part they've seen this progress a little bit. It has been built on my brake, so they don't exactly see it built, well, not many of them see it progress exactly, but they'll see the end stages of each brake as you go. So it really has got people talking and looking at Meccano. Now, they may not buy this, it being, well, the most expensive set for some years now, but it's got them talking about it. They might buy a little set, who knows. So in short, I think you'll enjoy it. It is traditional but different. It's hard to put it into a category, or rather Meccano category. It is using, perhaps not really futuristic and modern, the latest state-of-the-art technology regarding the electronics. At the end of the day, they are servo motors. They've been around since the year dot. But certainly it's using technology that people use all the time these days. The Bluetooth, for example. And you've probably already seen several videos on the web. There's about 4 or 5 different ways you can actually interact with it. So in short, before we go on to about the build and how long it took and any problems I had, if you are one of those, you may not like it, but if you're one of those who are intrigued by it, and I know it's a bit of an outlay, just buy one. It's great fun. It is a bit like a pet, I suppose. Or rather, I don't want to call it it sounds rude, so he, in this case, he's a bit like a pet in a way. And it's a bit weird when I managed to get the wiring all completed, which ain't that hard, but well, I'll come on to that. And then switched it on, and it did all its checks. He did all his checks, sorry, and said that I must be his creator. That was a bit weird. You're like, responsibility. But anyway, it is, as you can see, the door there. We've got about it's probably about 6 foot, just a shade over 6 foot the door. The door's not standard in this place, so if you look at that for a guide, that's probably just 6 foot, maybe slightly more. Odd size is basically what I'm saying. But he is about 4 foot tall. It's very awkward to video him like this because I'm about as far back as I can be in the workshop with the camera, and as you all know, the workshop is the kitchen. Recently tidied up, by the way. not much really. There's still a lot of Meccano about. I've just moved it elsewhere. So yeah, really, the short story is, it's brilliant. But it's not brilliant in a like, wow, look at what it can do. This is the base model, and this is where tradition comes in. This is your Meccano set. It's what comes later with it, like all Meccano sets. It's what you make after the set models, what you do to it afterwards, where the real amazing, maybe surprising stuff is going to be. The software is the first thing. There's one or two things I prefer different, me personally, with the way the brain works, but we'll come on to that in a bit. So for now, if you can get one, do it. It's a laugh a minute. Well, I say a minute because you just tend to repeat the same jokes, but they are quite comical, and I will be putting more up as we progress. Now folks, he'll probably take over and do some odd things now. He wants me to press some buttons at the moment. Rather, he wants me to press some buttons. Now, I've found the commands, certainly in this kitchen, it seems that it likes, well in all cases, it prefers, I should say, some commands and accepts the sounds of those easier than others. Now I've got a Black Country accent, which may be because I speak proper around here, but obviously he's quite posh. So that may be a thing. Occasionally he will pick up sounds that sound like a command, and occasionally he will do it. At work the acoustics are much better, and it's far more positive in his reactions to all his commands, which he has many of, even before you put your own in. Now, I'll let him do his things as he carries on, so you can see him doing whatever he's going to do. Let's just say whatever he does, and he may go to sleep. So he's blue now. But I'll go through some of the things, I'll make a start. Now, first thing I did was to charge the batteries. Now, as yet I haven't found the full details on the batteries, but the book says it should take 2 hours to charge. Now, you can see in the set video I did recently a bit about the batteries and a few other things, but they only took about 40 minutes. I don't know, obviously they weren't flat. We'll come on to those sort of things later. But it took about 40 minutes, 50 minutes to charge the 5 cells with its own charger. Thinking about it, seeing the prototype work and the production small one, it doesn't tell you how long he will operate on one charge. But as I said in the other video, you should be able to get battery packs from Maplins or the internet. Now, I reckon he's been going quite a bit now. Last night I demonstrated him about 5 times, and the easy one is the jokes. I believe he's supposed to have, I'm told, about 1,000 jokes, but he seems to repeat the same 6 more often than not. I'll have to confirm that. And he did, I must admit, he did seem, at work where there was more space, he did seem to move more than he does in here. When you're operating forward, he probably moves about 18 inch. He seemed to move more than that at work, so whether it actually senses from the brain space, I don't know. He certainly will bump into things. There's one command I haven't found though, is stop.
I am fluent in dog.
Well, there you go. Another language he's got. So, yeah. So, about 2 hours to charge, probably from flat.
Microwave.
What's he doing now? This is all new to me, this bit. Go to sleep. No, not pressing it. Although I may get the process wrong because I do forget to put them into different menus. So I'll start again. 2 hours to charge the batteries apparently. Don't know how long it's going to last, but I've checked his battery levels, or rather he checks it for you.
I am listening for my name.
We're looking at, I reckon, about 4 to 5 hours, depending on what you're going to do with him, of course. The motor's going to take the mouse juice. Quite chunky, well, I say chunky, robust motors in the feet, and they're well geared down. And even on the carpet here, he runs quite well. The floor's up and down like a fiddler's elbow because it's a very old building. The carpet's, it's not that thick, it's a bit worn out really, to be honest. But he has, for the most part, driven. He might go not as straight as you want him to do because the carpet is, and like a tank, one side drives more than the other, it's going to turn a bit. But generally, he does work well on carpet. He may even go well on thicker carpet, but that I'm yet to test. Right then, now, a lot of people might say 350 quid.
Night has fallen, making outer space visible. I enjoy stargazing.
Oh, this is interesting. I perhaps should have done this before. Just leaving him to it. So sometimes he will shut down onto standby, or as he say, goes to sleep. But I'll try and continue. It's a bit difficult at times. Now, as I say, some people might worry about, well, not worry, but think it's a lot of money. Well, it is a fair outlay, 350.
I am listening for my name.
But with your 12mm bolts, which is 406 of them, that's the half-inch ones, the standard nuts and the nylock nuts, and a little bit, this might help you as well, the nylock nuts are a lot shallower than previous nylock nuts. They're about a third shallower overall. The actual spanner part of the nut, not the encapsulated bit, is perhaps just a shade thicker than a standard nut now. So that might help you in your other Meccano buildings. Now, 12mm bolts.
2 electric sheep.
He's going to sleep now.
3 electric sheep.
I'll probably have to get a word in better now. Right, so, as I said, the 12mm bolts, the standard nuts and the nylock nuts come to, at dealer prices, £96.32. That does not include the 9.5mm bolts, the 14.7mm bolts, 19mm bolts, there's a couple of about 38 point whatever it is mil bolts, that holds the brain, and there's only 2. So if you can see the brain, you'll see there's only 2 screws. It's perfectly solid in there. It does look like something's missing, and I think I've got some black ones, so I'm probably going to add them just to neaten him up a bit. Regarding the build, how long did it take me? Well, according to my notes, of which there are, although there's a lot of scroll, about 18 pages of notes, and I'll go through them. I better revise first. The last time I made a note of the time taken was 10 hours 43 minutes, but there was more to add after that, mainly because of the wiring. I might as well say this now about the wiring. There's only a bit of information in about wiring him up. Now, you may have heard that it actually helps you to build him when he gets so far. Well, the only way I found this is indeed the wiring. So what you do is this: you switch the brain on and he tells you, he goes through his check, and he tells you what isn't complete. He doesn't tell you exactly what isn't complete, but he might say right arm isn't complete, so you start looking at the right arm. Now, there's extra sockets you can see on his left arm, that's the right of the picture. You can see there's a spare socket at the front. Obviously that would continue to another servo if you wanted to, of course, and I dare say one of the nicest things would be to see his hands move, which may entail Meccano hands, not his own hands, as you can see there. But there's a connection there should you need it. There's spare connections on the back of the brain. You only use 3 actually at the back of the brain, which I'll show you in a bit. It does show you where to put those. And then it's a bit of a process of elimination, which I don't like, really. And I've tried to look at this, although I've tripped myself up on occasions. try not to be traditional. I've tried to be from a complete newbie's point of view, and in that we shouldn't have to guess about the wiring. It doesn't really say in the instructions that when you get to this stage, or words to this effect, you can switch him on and he'll help you to wire himself up. Well, with a bit of assistance from yourself, of course. It will guide you. It doesn't actually say that. So that sort of thing, that needs to change, I think. But anyway, I say this is going to be a long one, I think, folks, but you might say they all are. But anyway, as I say, so we've got, where we are, nearly an hour there. The last stage was just 34, 42, 8 minutes, let's say about 1 hour 10. So yeah, and about 5 minutes when I got here to finish winding, got him back home, finished winding him up, which once you've done one side the rest is easy. And it's not difficult, it's just not knowing really where to start. It's one of the things that looks worse than it is. So we're talking about 12 hours to build, on and off. Now, that might sound a lot. I thought it was actually 15 hours, but obviously not. 12 hours to build, roughly. That includes everything from our point of view. So, making the notes, and I don't want to frighten anybody, but these are the notes. As I say, it is a lot of scrawl. It's not written neat. It's quite large. Not all pages are blank pages, so I haven't used both sides, but there's 18 pages there. But you can take it as, yeah, it's probably about a dozen pages really. It includes building him at very early hours of the morning in stages. Most is sort of like an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes per day. It includes me tripping myself up with traditional thoughts. I'll bring this up now, I'll probably bring it up again. When I come to put the motors in the feet, I just picked up a motor, because that's what you do in Meccano, you just want an electric motor. Picked it up and put a motor in, and when I finish that one, start on the other side, pick the other motor up, put it in. No, don't. This is one of the niggles in the book. I picked up a motor, I fitted it, then I realised when I'd done them both, I got the motors in the wrong side. Now you may be able to see from there, maybe, possibly, we'll get a bit closer in a bit. The left hand leg anyway, the wire is red and yellow. The right hand leg for the wire to the motor is red and brown, and it's thinner. There's different connections, and as you can guess, I got them in the wrong side. Now, I had to take it apart, which is about 8 bolts per foot to take the bottom, if you like, the sole off, swap the motors over. So that's like one of the where tradition, if you like, has tripped me up. Not really looking what I was doing. That said, the pictures for the motors are not really in your face. The red and yellow wire shows up a bit, but the other side doesn't really show up that much, red and brown, being well, not the same colours, but closer colours than red and yellow is. So that sort of thing, I've tripped myself up as we've gone. So, as I say, it includes building him at odd hours of the day. All cock-ups by myself, all niggles with the instruction book. Some of the niggles hasn't helped my own cock-ups, of course, they've made them worse probably. Nothing major, I don't think really. There's an issue, I just think off the top of my head now, there's an issue with the lower battery box bolts. I'll come on to it more specifically. Basically the bottom two weren't long enough, but got round it within the set quite easily. It did entail going through the instruction book a couple of times to check for bolts that weren't used that were longer. But that did solve the problem. You shouldn't have to do that, of course. But nothing really major. I have made, as I said, I have made mistakes myself. Basically, everything that you can think of, not just building the model, problems, niggles with the instruction book, my own cock-ups, and me writing the notes, doing it in stages, which means that if I have a break of say an hour and a quarter, the whole hour and a quarter isn't used to build. You know, I might go to the loo, I might have something to eat, I might have a drink, I might not start straight away for whatever reason. So, and you've got to open up and pack away at the end of it. And that's another thing as well, because he's so big, the box is so big, and after you've really built the upper torso, that's all right. That'll go in my locker just about. But once you got the head on, that's it. So it had to be every time. It had to be put in my Land Rover, and it's a 90, so it bounces around a bit. And it had to be put in the back of there and the box is still pretty good. And although I have really tightened up the bolts on this, and I did my own fault, I did strip 3 bolts, would you believe, but I haven't broke any parts. But the end result of that is, apart from a sore hand with the new or newish Allen driver, because especially the legs, there's prolonged bolting to do. You don't really stop bolting the legs together, so it is very traditional in that sense. It had to go in the Land Rover. It had to travel from work to home several times. Now, not all of the model did all the distances, but certainly the torso, head and one arm, the upper torso, head and one arm, has travelled something in the region of 100 miles to and from work, bouncing around in the back of a Land Rover at all speeds from around, so 30 to 70 mile an hour. The legs has done a little bit less, let's say about 75 miles, and the feet. But it has to be carted around, it has to cart it into the flat, and he's not been in the box. He's either been wrapped up in a coat or a towel, a bath towel. Not one bit has fallen off or broke in that 100 miles or so. Quality of the parts is good. Certainly the upper body parts, there seem to be a different, or upper body and waist and hip, there seem to be a different plastic to some of it. Those are absolutely perfect. There's not one moulding mark on them at all. So basically, where is, should we call it his Meccano badge, the bow tie if you like, all that grey structure there in his neck, his head, round the rear, down to his hips, and the upper forearms, they're all very strong, very well made, not one bit of moulding marks at all. That does change with a few other parts. The forearms is a lighter, much bendier construction to keep it light because of the extremities of the arms. The legs are a lighter construction than the chest pieces, if you like, and the shoulder blades and that. They are stiffer, but they do have the odd little mark where they, I presume they've been moulded in a chain of them and then snipped off somehow. So you get a few moulding marks there. But on the whole, yeah, it'd be nice if they hadn't got the moulding marks. On the whole, it's plastic, of course, but it is decent, very decent indeed. I love the bow tie, the Meccano badge. That is different to the box, by the way. It's more or less oval, well not oval, like a rounded off rectangle. This is the same as the little one's badge nameplate. So, I say it's going to be a long one, folks. So I'll have a bit of a break and a bit of a refresh, and then we'll come back with a bit more. So folks, regarding the parts, or finding the parts. Now, if you haven't already seen the previous video when we have a look inside the set, and although it's smaller, the look at the G15, the small one set, some of the bags are absolutely rammed full with parts. It does make for some fun finding parts till you start to use the parts and get down through them a little bit and thin them out basically. Now of course you could open all the parts up and spread them all out to make it easy to find. But how many people do that? I mean, you'd be tripping over parts forever. There's 1180 parts in the set. So you probably wouldn't do that. But it does take time. So I dare say the initial stage is certainly the upper body. Most of the parts, the larger plastic parts, are in 1 or 2 bags. So maybe 3 bags. You don't go through absolutely everything, but of course you don't know. I do know now, of course, but I didn't know at the time. but you do end up a bit of a hunt for parts, which, you know, those of you can remember or indeed do have the old, say, 1960s sets with the polystyrene trays, and they do make the sets look a lot more than they are in parts. And I generally like that, but if you had to do that for this set, it'd be one hell of a size of tray. So that does slow you down, so take that into account when I say how long it's taken me, as I said earlier, the sort of 12 hours, you know. And talking of the time to build, I think if you took away that I hadn't done the notes, and if you took away me tripping myself up with traditional, shall we say, values, if you like, and doing things slightly differently, not looking what I was doing really as well sometimes, and the time of day, I reckon less than 10 hours, I'm guessing a bit there, but less than 10 hours, that may be enough to put people off. But of course, you can do a bit, then put it to one side, go into something else. I mean, me personally, not now because it's the end of the season, but I listen to the cricket and on the radio, the test matches and that, which is the beauty of listening to it on the radio. You don't have to sit down and watch the telly, and you can get on with other things. This is what I do sometimes. Not in the case of this one though, but yeah, I would say 10 hours would be a good average on the whole. And when you say that, you might think, oh God, it's really complicated. It's not. It's not complicated at all. You just have to be careful of a few things. And some of the parts are handed left hand, right hand. The chest pieces, for example. So you just have to be a bit more cautious, a bit more careful selecting the parts and making note where they go. Even set though, I'll say that myself, I did make a mess of it with the arms. See the grey, and what I'll do, I'll try and call the parts a bit, well, as much as I can, the traditional names of the traditional Meccano metal parts, even though they might not be the same shape. But you can see between you see the two, just take one arm and you can see two white plastic covers really. Inside there you can see just sticking out in part the yellow servos. Well, on the upper arm you'll see the servos in the white cases, and in between you've got two, and I'll call them flat plates, a bit similar to a stop sign shape. I actually, although I took a lot of care to do this, I still made a few cock-ups, and I actually got those with the edge facing you now, not the face of the plate facing you as they are. So for example, I had to part dismantle the upper arms to turn them round to get it something like right. So all those little errors are included in the time. So what I'm saying is, I'd say an average of 10 hours, maybe less. Now, as is the case with, I think, most Meccano sets, from the cheapest to the most expensive, over the last, oh I don't know, perhaps 18 months now, maybe 2 years, there has been tweaks and changes to the instructions, and mostly it is for the better. And I suppose in some cases this has been the same for some years now, where each stage you only do a little bit in the stage. Now, I'll just have a quick look in the book. When you open the book, it's quite thick. I mean, here's the book. Nice glossy book, and it's got a stitched stitched spine, which is good because otherwise the some of the instruction books, the staples pull through. But I'm going to show you now how many stages there are. I know it's a bit darker here, but yeah, you should be able to just see there. 156 stages. Now that probably make you think, oh my life. Well, yes it does. But then you look at some of the stages and you realise you're just adding one nut and bolt. Now throughout the stage, and this is where my notes actually get stretched and added to, perhaps unnecessarily, but at least I know where, if I can read my own writing, where I find these things, should I have to go into something a bit more detail. There are several occasions, probably a dozen stages, maybe more than that, but I wouldn't have thought more than 20 stages, where you've added just one nut and bolt, or one nut and bolt and one part, small part, there would have been no problems with, you know, where these stages follow on from each other. You could have compressed 2 stages, certainly, maybe even 3 stages, possibly it's even 4 stages, but then again they don't generally follow all together like that. Where, you know, you'll come to, you know, you might have one stage where there's just 1 or 2 bolts added, the next stage is quite involved, so it wouldn't work like that. But when you've got like 1, 2, maybe 3 stages where there's a bolt added and a nut added, and then the next stage is just a small part added with another bolt, those could be compressed. And in doing so, I reckon, this is a guesstimate mind, I reckon you could have reduced the stages in this build to perhaps 125, maybe less than that. And the reason I say that, or another reason I say that, is because the format changes a couple of times in the instruction book. One that springs to mind, the legs. Now they are slightly handed, but you've only got to turn it round a side, and the left leg can be the right leg, no problem there. When you've got duplicate parts to make that are the same or very nearly the same, you tend to find that you either get a stage or stages that when you begin or get to the end, it will show you 2, in this case it was legs at the end, say times 2. So you go back to the start of the section and build the other leg. But earlier on, that wasn't the case, where there was a stage where I was more or less expecting that, but it didn't. It started, I don't know what the stage numbers was, let's take a while, say stage 50, building whatever it was, might have been the arms or part of the arms now. So you build stage 50, so 50 to 60, just to make up some numbers, was building one part of the arm. Then, say 60 to 70 is build another part of the arm. Now instead of going times 2, it actually repeated itself. So like from 50 to 60, 60 to 70 is one arm, and then 70 to 80 and 80 to 90, and those are not actual stages, but was the other arm. Well, why not stick to the same format, showing times 2 of them, or continue with another row of stages to do the next one. Doing it with the times 2 saves a lot of stages. Add that and compressing several stages into one, we may have even been at about 100 stages. I don't think any more than 125. Now, I mentioned the locating pins, or pegs maybe, moulded into some parts that fit in the holes, just as the bolts do. But it just generally mean that you only need, for example, there's like a part akin to a 3-hole, 1.5 inch angled girder. Now, on one side of it you'll have 2 of these pins, which means you can add it to another part with just 1 bolt and it won't turn due to its 1 bolt fixing. I'll show you a bit more detail of some of the parts later on. Obviously we'll operate him a bit as well, but I may leave the full operating to when I'm a bit more used to it, and in a separate video. But these locating pins do mean, as I said before, better tolerances, tighter tolerances, and less nuts and bolts used. There is still lots of nuts and bolts used, but of course this is compatible with classic Meccano. But if you were building something where, I think we've all built something where you need that little bit of play in the system, that little bit of extra leeway in the system to make something work, you're probably not going to get it so much with this, because the tolerances are so much better. They're not tight, there's a little teeny bit of play, but it's much better than certainly old Meccano that's been used a bit, or rather a lot. So folks, as I mentioned before, probably more than once now, there are 406 12mm bolts. There are no standard length bolts, the 5.8mm. The smallest is the 9.5mm bolts. There ain't that many of those, but there is 406 12mm bolts. There's probably a couple of spares. Certainly there's a couple of nuts left over, some encapsulated nuts, the nylock type, and a few longer bolts left over. But how many times after all that, all those nuts and bolts you can see shining at you just on the one side, how many times do you think the spanner has been used as a spanner? That's either the open end or the box end. Any ideas? Well, if I include a couple of times where I needed to get into a small gap to do with the servos, where I used the spanner end on, and the reason for that was, and I've said this before, and yeah, this is my biggest beef, if you like. I'm going to be honest, the new spanner's got to be scrapped. The handle part is too wide, and when you do need the box end spanner, the widest part is very near the box end spanner. And as in the case with this, I couldn't get the spanner into the space to hold the nut in place, just to start the nut on the bolt. Now you might be thinking, well, all being well, I could have got at it, perhaps, you know, in another situation. Why don't I use the spanner throughout to tighten the nut? Well, in all, including that couple of times where I needed to use the spanner side on, just to hold the nut in place, you're looking at no more than a dozen times when you use a spanner. And that's either end of the spanner. And why is that? Well, a lot of the parts are moulded to hold the nut. So once you get it started and then it starts to tighten up, you don't need the spanner. And yeah, it's a little bit away from tradition. It's not a new thing, but it's certainly handy, and I have really tightened up the bolts, hence why nothing's fell off probably in my travels. I did, my fault, I said earlier I'd stripped 3 12mm bolts, and I've stressed a little bit of the plastic on the foot because I've been a bit heavy-handed there, too heavy-handed. But on the whole, if you like, my abuse of tightening the bolts has been perfectly fine. It hasn't damaged any parts, hasn't broke any certainly. So yeah, 12 times only, and that's only approximately as well, that you use a spanner. But as I say, I've given the new spanner, and I'll still use it. It is a bit longer than the older type, but I really think it's time to perhaps change the new spanner, make the handle a bit thinner. And you could do that yourself, I suppose. So folks, I'm now going down my my list of notes, scroll. Something I've got to check out, I don't know the answer to yet. The servos, as you can see, the limey yellow colour sticking out here and there. They're blue on the little one, but the number on the box on these is DV-06. I think it's a different number on the little one. I've got to check that, and I'll come back to that. But it may mean there's a slight difference in the motors. Maybe these are stronger servo motors. Don't know. I could be completely wrong on that one. But certainly the servos and all the parts do fit nicely. It wasn't without the odd niggle, as I've said, and hopefully we'll pick those out my notes as we go. Now folks, reading through my notes, a couple of things now regarding the instructions. Nothing major, but something that a newbie might get tripped up on, and in the process slows you down. Now of course I've got the lighting set up to show Frankie off, so this might be a little dark, but here we have 2 examples of slight differences, slight errors. Stage 11 here, we're putting this, you might call that a double bent strip or double angled strip there, clamps around the motor. It just clips on and stays in place, but you do have to put a bolt in either side later on. If you notice here, you've got the one-to-one picture of the bolts to be used, but there's no bolts used in that stage. There's the 2 times, which for the most part does follow through, except what I said earlier about sometimes the stages start again under new numbers to do a duplicate part. Another thing here, now this is alright on this side of the picture. You see, I was on about the recesses. I don't know if you can see this, but I'll try and hold it out here, see if you can see it there. It's too far away. This, we'll call that a flat plate, and these I'll call angled girders. This side shows the recesses to hold the nuts. They call that A. The other side hasn't got the recesses. It's just, well, not all flat, but where the bolt head meets, or in some cases the nut, meets the flat plate, it is flat there. And it tells you to make two. It shows you which side to put the bolt through. So the A side, the recess side, so you're not going to use the nuts, the moulding to hold the nuts, because we're having these pots and then they've got their old moulding. Now that is a nice idea and it's quite clear. I'm losing it here. But that form of describing which side the parts to use, which side the parts to put the bolts through, isn't followed through all the time, and certainly later on when you come to do with the feet, for example, and this is another traditional spot of the build, these small angled girders, like the ones I've just shown you in the book, they're about 1.5 inch long, like a 3/0. Now a lot of those are used in part, a bit like angled brackets would have been used in Mechanics Made Easy days and early Meccano days, so like probably just after World War I at the latest, where you didn't have angled girders and you made up your parts to angled girders by using angled brackets and strips. And then this is one of the traditional things about the build, if you like, that you do build up the parts. You get the bases, flange plates you might call them, for the feet for example, but you add to that and the sides are built up, and probably almost half of the top are built up by using strips. And these angle brackets, much like you would have done in the early days, making up your own angle brackets with the angle girders with the angle brackets and strips. Now the pictures are very small. My lighting when I was building wasn't fantastic. And the short story is I put the strips the wrong way around. I should have put them smooth side up instead of recessed side up. So there was another part that made it even longer build because I had to start again. Fortunately I'd only done 1 and a bit feet at the time. So it's little niggles like that that slow you down really, and there's more of them of course, but it ain't exactly rammed full of them. Talking of the diagrams, and this is probably more of a personal thing as well, I do find just 1 or 2 where more arrows would have been more beneficial, or different arrows, different style, different angle of arrows would have shown things up more clearly. One thing, when you put the motors into the feet, the flange plates shall we call them, there's no arrows at all, there's no close-up showing you where the spacers fit, which was easy enough to work out, but again from a newbie's point of view you don't want to have to think about it really too much, because we don't want people to be put off by it. Now going back to this stage 12 of the instruction book, the large picture shows you attaching the 2 angle brackets with 1 bolt through the centre. The 2 pins are either side, but in the recess picture it shows you with 1 bolt in each corner. So it's another one that stops you in your tracks and makes you have to think about it more, so you don't need that. Now stage 13 indeed shows a plate being put together on the bottom of the servo with a bolt in each corner. So it's like half of this stage has been put in that one and half of that stage has been put in that one. Between the two you can work it out between the 2 stages, but you shouldn't have to. Hopefully this will help anybody, and if you need more detail, it's hard to put some things into words, writing and verbally. Sometimes if you do have problems, I'll by all means contact me and I'll try and help you. I might make it worse. But I don't know if folks remember, but in the first video I mentioned the instruction book, the set video. I didn't go into it in full detail, but what I did mention, let's try and get this to show up. Here we've got a new bolt by the looks of it, 7mm long, 9/32 of an inch. It's an M906 and there's 4 of them. And on here you can see above them we've got the long bolts, you know, from 12mm up. Apart from that one there, they're all light grey. To denote the zinc. That one there, the new bolt there, is shown virtually black. Now this was a problem, and probably the most niggly and annoying problem of the whole set, although, as I mentioned before, the couple of bolts sold to the battery box were too short, got round it. That was, oh great, but that was like an oh great moment. But this was more annoying because it took so long to find the bolts. So I'll get to the stage where I need to do that, which according to my notes is 14. Yes, it is. So I got something right in my notes. So stage 14 there, and it shows you the one-to-one pictures. Above is a 12mm and below is the new bolt. You'll notice that the head is shown being quite shallow, and I bet you're all thinking, as indeed I was, that that would be good sometimes for clearance issues with traditional builds. Right, so I'll start looking for a bolt that's black, shorter than 9.5mm. Couldn't find it. Went through the bags twice. Second time going through the bolt bag with the longer bolts in, longer than 12mm, I found them. And why was it hard to find them? Because one, the bolt head is virtually the same depth, slightly shorter, slightly less deep, less high I should say, than a standard bolt head. But they were flipping zinc. So there's me spending about 15-20 minutes looking for some short black bolts, and they're zinc. So, and that, even now I say, that really sort of got to me a little bit, and overall I think that was the worst thing, or the one that niggled me the most. And the other thing about those short bolts is that they aren't really bolts, they're screws in the normal sense, or more like screws, because the thread, although on the diagram is shown the same as Meccano thread in the symbol, it isn't, which is a shame, because now it means that you can't really use those in anything else but what they was used for here. And it's used for attaching something onto the servo, if I remember correctly. They're something not quite as coarse but akin to a self-tapper thread. So that sort of naffs up the idea of using them in places where you're struggling for space in more traditional builds. Now folks, earlier I said I had problems fitting the battery box. It was only with the lower bolts here. There's one there and there's one the other side there, and of course you've got this orangey red plate here. There's a girder underneath that, an angle girder equivalent of, and with the extra thickness of the bracket that's on the battery box, the bolts just wouldn't come through to the other side. So there's an error there. That's arguably the biggest error really, I suppose, regarding an actual error. Now I'm thinking, is it a design error or is it just an instruction book error? Probably the latter. So how to get round it? Remember, those of you who've seen my videos, a model, whether it's small or large like this, is only a complete failure if you can't do it with the parts in the set to get it to work or put together as instructed, or more or less as instructed, with the set parts that are left over. Whilst it's not a good situation to be in, it's a way around. So what I did, I thought, well, the next size up bolt, these were 12s, the next size up is 14.7. How many of them are in the set to start with? There's 20. So I'm just going to put him down because he's a bit heavy. So folks, I went through the contents list in the book first and found that there were 20 14.7mm bolts. But of course, you do get the odd spare. There may have been other errors which meant that perhaps a 14.7mm bolt or two weren't used when they were supposed to be used. Which, to be honest, could be the problem with this. So I went through all the stages, counting up, and I did it twice to make sure, counting up just how many of the 14.7mm bolts were used. And there's 5 spare, according to my adding up. So I put, or rather used, 2 14.7mm bolts in the bottom bracket on the battery box, and I didn't know it at the time, come the end of the build, hey presto, there's still some spare 14.7mm bolts amongst some others, and it's cured, so it could be that that's just an error in the instructions. So folks, here you can see the wiring. Looks a little bit of a mess, slightly, mainly because I've left quite a bit of play here to allow for movement in the wires as the arms move. Now for me it was a bit of guesswork. The instructions start you off with the 3 sockets here telling you which wires go into the first 3 sockets there. Now the left one is the left arm, but which one? Is it one of these? Was it one of these? Well, when I started I realised that these had been tucked away as I built it inside, so I thought, well, there are the nearest to those sockets, so we'll try. Got it right. Same with the other side, the top right. I would have called that the shoulder wire, to be honest, not the arm. Into number 3. Now, let's come out of the clip there. We've got these little, well, let's call them clips, I suppose, but they're more like, well, clips will do. They'll probably find a use elsewhere in classic building, but these little 1 bolt fixed clips, there's several of those, and there's a few spare as well. In fact, I haven't actually used all of them really. Well, I've probably used most. Got 1 on each upper arm, 2 sort of the back of the neck there, or back of the shoulder blades if you like. 1 each side there, which I haven't used, that one. Some inboard, just out of the shot, inboard in his hips if you like, for the wires from the legs. And I might use a couple of the spare clips to tighten, or rather neaten up if you like, the wires coming up from the feet through the legs. But so you start with these 3 really. Obviously there's the power socket there. These 2 are for the legs. Red and yellow for the left, and red and brown for the right. They are different size sockets. The right hand is slightly smaller. Once you get these in and switch it on, it will tell you not what's exactly wrong, but it'll say, like, oh, as I said before, arm is incomplete. So it's a little bit of guesswork. At the top here we've got, follow the wires, we've got 1 wire here. This one loops round from the top for the lights. I've tucked that in the clip as well. And this one here goes through to the base of this servo here. Now what you find with the servos, they've got 2 wires, a short and a long. This longer one here at the bottom comes down into the middle there, like the head wire if you like. So it's a bit not complicated. Yeah, I scratched my head a little bit to start with. As I said before, if it said in the book that with the wiring, once you get so far, it will help you sort it out when you switch it on, and it does its checks for the first time, then I wouldn't have scratched my head so much. But it does do that. Get these 3 in, certainly, put the switch it on, which is just there, and he will eventually tell you that so and so is complete, the arm or whatever. As you can see there, we've got some spare sockets for more servos, so there is potential, I suppose, to add to it. I've not heard of anybody yet doing anything more advanced like that. So there you are, that's the wiring, and I am thinking of adding a few little additions, nothing complicated, but in traditional Meccano, a bit of metal Meccano, we're going to have some eyebrows I think, or maybe some glasses, I don't know. I might even use my Meccano hat on him. I've had to get up off the floor, so I apologise for my gut being in the way, but the years have gone by quite a long time now where I could sit on the floor and do Meccano for years without any problems, but now after about 30 seconds I get a dead leg. So I've had to stand up for a bit. Now, apart from, I call them niggles in the book, and I just mentioned the one that got to me the most, there is no real major issues. Most of the niggles in the book are just plain errors. Something's missing. Like I said, where there's it seems there's half of one staging one, and then the half that should have been in the first stage is in the second one, and a bit of a mix-up, you might say. But when you build it, and I suppose this does depend on things like the size of your hands. I mean, age-old problem with Meccano when I was a kid. I got small hands, thin fingers, but I hadn't got the length in the fingers to reach certain far corners, if you like. Now I have got the reach. My fingers are far too fat, too many cakes really, and pork pies, I suppose. But of course, when you build things, you do things yourself, perhaps differently to others, in the way you put things together. And some things some people might find easier, some people not. Now, in the build, we're coming up to the neck, support for neck. We've done the brain. Is the first thing you do. Put the brain into its holder. This is also the phone holder, which seems to have come open. Now, it's fairly strong. You've got the chest and the abdomen done, and you do the same with the shoulder blades. I wouldn't say it's really got a spine, but just behind the nameplate here is an angle girder, and it's the same width as those two pieces there, which is what, 2 inch. So this is equivalent. Behind there is about a 4-hole angle girder, and there's one each end, and then we put a plate on top of that, and then we put the neck on top of that. You try fitting these angle girders when you're at this stage where the front and back is on, and because of the box in close proximity to the back of the bolts, you try getting your finger or spanner in there. In fact, that was one of the sort of dozen occasions, and I did actually use a spanner, or try to. It did help a little, but it wasn't easy to get in, and then I've get up in the end and used my fingers to hold it in place. Really, the angle girder there should have been added before you put the back on, and vice versa. One of them, you put it on, I can't remember if it's the front or back. It's the back, because the front's the most difficult. You put the angled girder on before you put the actual shoulder blades on to the rear of the structure. Of course, that's easy, but then you come to do the front one, and you can't get at it very easily. You may find it easy if you've got smaller hands, of course. I'm going to fire him up. I'll just press a button because he went to sleep. He should fire up now, yeah. And I've got the app to control him on my phone.
At your service. Say my name. Frankie.
Now, what we do, you let him do that, let him sort of wake up, let him say his own name. Now, one thing about the operation, and I'm not going to do everything today. I was going to do this by voice command, but it's getting a bit awkward in here. And I say I have the app so we can use the Bluetooth connectivity. It's just like a remote control. It takes a little bit of getting used to on a small phone. Smally. We've switched him on, and then we're going to press scan. I'm not very good with the app, to be honest. It's basically a remote control. So I'm now scanning. Now I have switched the sound off. You'll be hearing like a if this was got the sound on, because I'm doing the video. And at the top we've got Meccanoid, and there's a number.
Greetings and salutations.
I'll press that, and it comes up there, connect. Press connect.
Bluetooth detected. Do
There
you
you are.
want to connect? Press the yellow button for yes, or the blue button for no.
So I want to connect. So I come up to his brain and press the yellow button.
Bluetooth connected.
So there we are. Now, I am not really au fait with the controls. Whatever it's called, where you put the phone on to the brain and stand away and make moves yourself, and he records that. I've found it on here, but I haven't used it. So I'm going to press the centre one, and we've now got a diagram of exactly what we can see. So we've got him there with his arms out, And that's what he's doing, as you can see. Now I'm going to put his arms down. So it's all touch screen. We've got a little button on the screen there. And then I'm just going to pull his arm down like that. As you can see, he's done that. And the same here. There. Now, I don't know if you can see, it's a bit smaller now, but round the bottom you've got certain controls with arrows on. Left and right, and the same at the rear of his feet by his heels. Ignore these ones at the sides for now. If you notice, there is no straight arrow to move straight, which I thought would have been a no-brainer. I want to move straight, just bloop, press it in the middle, move straight. What you have to do is sort of like press one, and that get him moving, of course, and then you move across to the other one quickly, it seems, although I'm not very good at it, and hold that one down and keep your finger on, then he will go straight. It sort of like lights up the two buttons. But I'll try and do that. I'll try and move him now, try and get out of the way so you can see what's going on. Now, the position that the diagram is in is showing his front, and as you can see we've got the front there. So I'm going to press, let me see, I'm going to press him to go right, and then hopefully I'll press the left button at the same time and he'll move forward. Well, he did, but I'm a bit slow reaction. As you can see, I'm not a very good driver. With these this control here, you'll notice we've got arrows either side. Now, as you can see, as I've been doing, we've got Meccanoid is there. Try and get the phone to come on. Meccanoid is there, Frankie, and he's facing you. Now you might be walking along behind. So what do? You press this arrow, or indeed the other arrow, and as you can see, so all the controls appertain to your position that you are to the robot. When you do things, drive him along and get him to do things, it actually records as you do it. You can save it, but you can just press play, of course, and then it will do what you've just done, play it back. Which is a good idea if you've done something like I managed to actually drive him straight. It would be a bit of a result for me. Drive him straight, I could play that back. You don't have to pace him out like you did with those that you remember the old big track, and I think the most you could do was 99, key in 99. But you'd have to pace it out first. So it is it's easier to control than I make it, put it that way. Here's another little traditional bit. Those of you, I'm sure it would. Those of you used to the plastic handled screwdrivers, the worst ones, these are like 1970s ones I suppose. Got two here. Both seen better days. This is sort of mid-70s multi-kit sets, I think. No, not multi-kit. Space set certainly. That one there, seen better days. But those are really painful to use in prolonged use, really dig into your hands. But the better handled plastic screwdriver from around the same sort of period, perhaps a bit earlier as well, are these full plastic handled ones. But as you can see, there's plasters around that. There's a reason, because they hurt. After, several hours use, they hurt. Well, the new hexagonal angled Allen driver is... It's about halfway between the two pain-wise. And yes, I did really tighten up the bolts more than normal, perhaps. So that's partly, but quite traditionally it hurts your hands. I almost got blisters there, almost got a blister there, and it was swollen there. So there are a few things that are very traditional. Now, talking of traditional, we're back to the instruction book being a bit of a niggle. And some of the inset pictures are so small they're absolutely pointless. But also, when I said earlier about there being 150 odd stages and a way to reduce them a couple of ways,
When my eyes are blue,
there's another way to do it where it would have saved stages as well. Every so often you get a stage in the book that shows a picture of the stage or how far you've got so far on the stages. So it might be, say, the upper body. Then it's got a stage number window, but with just the stage number in, nothing else. There's no need for that. You just have to have a smaller inset picture. This is the stage that you've got to, and then you continue on. There's probably about 6 times through the stages for that. So yet again, we could be, alright, we could be down to sort of 100 stages, and it makes it look so much less intimidating. Not, as I say, not that it's that difficult to do. One of the things I spotted was that some of the drawings,
When my eyes are blue, I am listening
and
to
it's
my
difficult to draw some of these in sort of 3-dimensional look. The arms and the wrists,
Remember, when my eyes are blue, I am listening
just
to
held
my
there,
name.
they're like double brackets, the old metal double brackets, of course they're plastic. The image shows them as just straightforward double brackets, just 90-degree angle bends, but they're not. There's more to the moulding than that. Now I spotted it straight away, but those who are not used to it, they end up looking for a different part, and I did check a few parts to make sure they was all the same. You might be looking for one that's specific, just plain right angles, not with extra strength mouldings on, and that's another thing that slows you down. Something in reverse now with the instructions. People who've been buying the new sets will notice that the black parts in the instructions have been, where there's like black on black, have been highlighted with a white outline, which makes them easy to see. In the same vein as that, the white parts that you see, such as these cases that come in 2 halves, these holders here for the servos, they don't stand out brilliantly on the white background in the book. They're not too bad. They could do with a darker outline around them. You've probably noticed a theme running now. It is mostly instruction book niggles with the odd cock-up, I'll say. Just 1 or 2. The colour of the bolts being perhaps the worst one for me. Again, we've got a problem with the book, but it doesn't really, as long as you notice it, it doesn't really cause any bother with the build. You'll be carrying on with the build and you get to, and according to my notes here, you get to stage 60. And then you turn over the page and you look at the stage and think, something's not right either here. It doesn't go 60, 61, 62, 63. You've just done stages 53 to stages 60. You turn over the page and there you will see stages 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59 and 60 printed again, and they're exactly the same as the ones you've just done. This happens twice throughout the build. That's the first occasion, and then again a bit later on in the 80s, I think it is. So as long as you notice that, in other words, there's no need for those. There's about 4 pages been added into the instruction book that doesn't need to be there. They're just duplicate for no reason whatsoever. Just reading my notes on about those stages, I just noticed, just as a point of interest, I was on about the lack of use of the spanner. According to my notes here, stage 67, so we're just under halfway, and it says spanner used for the 4th time. That's it being used as a spanner properly, either one end of the spanner or the other. Just the 4th time, and we're already on stage 67. Regarding the stages being duplicated for no reason, we have extra. We have it in part, if you like. So it's hard to put things into words sometimes, but basically I started doing some of the leg and I got about 4 stages in. Then I turned over the page and the build for that leg started again and continued to the end of those stages where the leg was completed. Basically what I think that was, as I mentioned before, where the stages were repeated for no reason, I think it's the book is made out of essentially four sides on the pages layered together, as any book would be. And therefore this is the other end of these of the stages I mentioned before. It's the other page duplicated, but it's all these little things add up to could add up to confusion, which is, yeah, the little niggles, nothing really that major, but we don't want this. We you know, this day and age, it needs to be sorted right. Otherwise it could be a case of, oh, I'm fed up with this, shoved in the cupboard, never to see the light of day again. So folks, we're nearly there. The main structure, and I try and be quite accurate with my timings, but the main structure, that's upper body, the brain, which is the first thing you do really, head fitted, legs, feet, arms, all that was done in 10 hours 43 minutes. You can add another hour and a quarter or so onto that, so about 12 hours for the wiring. So I'm now going to ask him what the time is. What time is it?
Local time 7:58 p.m. Exiting to main menu.
Time's knocking on, I better go and have a shower and go to work. So it picks up that command very well. You can ask him to walk with you, and he tells you what to do, and then you pull his arm up and then move it, steer it in other words. Motion control. No, he's listening for me, sorry. Frankie! Frankie! Frankie!
What is up?
Motion control.
Motion control.
Forward. Left turn. Here's one that I can't get to work sometimes. LIM library. No, tell a lie. Main menu. Frankie, main menu.
Exiting to main menu.
So I'm making it look less able than it is. Still learning, still playing really. We're in main menu, so I'm going to try and do a recorded one now.
Record LIM. LIM mode activated.
See,
Ready for user
it picked me up doing that.
Press red button to record. Press blue button to exit to main menu.
So I don't want to do that, I'm
When
going to press the
you
blue
hear
button.
exiting to main menu.
So I've exited to main menu.
Listing available voice commands. Motion control. Record LIM. LIM library. Introduce yourself. Tell me a joke.
These are all the
What time is it?
main menu
High five.
commands.
Shake hands. Walk with me. Settings. Go to sleep. Help. List commands. Main menu.
Now folks, I can't get him to pick up LIM library. If I remember right, that's Learn Intelligent Movement or something like that, whatever it is. Now I'm going to do it manually, partly. Green button.
Press red button to record an LIM move. Press green button to go to the LIM library. Press blue button
Press the green
LIM
button.
library. Press green button to list commands. Press blue button to exit to main menu.
So hopefully we'll let Frankie Meccanoid do his stuff now. Wave. Bye bye folks. I'll do a more detailed...
Command right away and I'll do it.
Oh, he's
Press
busy,
red
isn't he?
button to delete. Press green button to list commands.
So there you go.
Button to exit
I'll let
to
him
main
waffle on.
menu.
That's bye from Frankie Meccanoid and bye from me. I know it's been a long one, and believe me, it was a lot longer than the bit that you're going to see. So, bye for now. We'll do a more detailed operating one when I've got a bit more used to it. Bye folks, see you again.